Hi everyone. I'm sorry I'm not with you today, but we're 1 month away from a very big project that we've been building up for the past 2 years, Walk and Talk, which is now in a biannual format happening in 1 month. So as you can imagine, we're very busy. But still, I'm very happy to join you all. I'm Jesse James, which is a real name. I'm grandchild of the Azorean diaspora, born in Canada, but I grew up in the Azores, and I've been working and moving from the Atlantic between the island of San Miguel, where I grew up and where I carry a deep sense of mission, and Lisbon, which has welcomed me a long time ago and has helped also to project what happens in the Azores in Ponta Delgada. So I'm living, and I imagine this, and I think of these projects also in this sort of pendulum. Before I dive into the presentation itself, I would like just to give you some context. I'll start by framing Onde Fala, which is the institution, the entity, who we are, what we're doing, and what are the intentions that are guiding our work. And I'll also share some images and some key concepts that have been fundamental for us in the way that we are working that has a lot to do with communality and autonomy. So, and that being said, it's important just to, of course, also to make clear that everything that I'm going to be sharing is factual, but at the same time, none of it is very linear. So it's a journey, it's a path that has been shaped as much by enthusiasm as by doubts and failures, and also this need of constantly needing to reinvent or to renew. And I think working from this place, from the Azores, which like any other is of course very particular, comes with many challenges and tensions, but also a lot of misunderstandings that can be very rich and interesting to work from. So today, in the specific context of TIDAL, I'll focus a bit more on our art residency program, which is one of the pillars of our work, and that it is completely transversal to all of the projects that we're now organizing, and it's this living laboratory where a lot of these projects get developed. So I'll start with this image of the Atlantic that is turned upside down. It's a very simple gesture, but I think it's one that has a profound impact because it shifts the traditional perception. It destabilizes the dominant gaze, and it invites us to imagine other centers and these other margins. And especially for us working from this archipelago in the middle of the Atlantic, that's something very powerful and very important. This is a reference to the artist and cartographer Sabine Rétoré. She had this piece called Mediterranean Without Borders. So it's a reference created where she was creating this political map of the Mediterranean without any borders, and it was oriented towards the south. And in doing so, she was returning agency to the margins and in a way redrawing the relationships between these different territories. So I think this image or this perspective can help us illustrate the possibilities of positioning and the alternative relations that one seeks to build. And I think we can, of course, start from the Atlantic, but changing the way we also understand this ocean. And it's important, at least for us, as central to our activity, to display centrality and to occupy periphery as a point of departure and not as a limit. And of course, the Azores, it's a very complex and interesting context. For those who don't know, they're volcanic islands. It's an archipelago of 9 islands. It's in the connection or intersections of 3 tectonic plates. It's an autonomous region that belongs to Portugal. It has currently 250,000 inhabitants, a diaspora of 1.3 million scattered throughout North America, but also South America. It was designated by the Sylvia Earle Foundation as one of the hope spots in the world for ecological renewal. And I think we've also been very focused on this idea of hope also as a strategy to work. Moving forward, this is Alifala, so it's a cultural nonprofit association. It was founded in 2011 with the first edition of Walk and Talk, which is a festival, I think, which name reflects very well its action. It's something that is expanded across the territory, and it's taking shape through encounter and dialogue. And it's really, in a way, echoing the Greeks, the peripatetics, and the Aristotelian premise that walking facilitates thought. And later on in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, we opened Vaga, which in Portuguese in Portuguese or in English it would mean like some sort of a wave or a very long wave, or vague in French. Which is an art and knowledge space in the island of São Miguel, in the city of Ponta Delgada, that also serves as our headquarters. So, and over the course of nearly now 15 years, what we have sought to do, again, with all the failures and achievements along the way, is to cultivate a space for creation that is rooted in the territory, that is collective, that is open and accessible and porous. So we value situated and also sensitive knowledge, the sharing of resources, and autonomy, which is a very important word for us as art workers, but also as Azorians. Autonomy as a practice, and the continuous experimentation also as a method. So we think of culture mostly as a process, something that is in some sort of a journey or in a path. So it's about a lot. It's really about the journey, but it's also about the relation. So it's also about the affective dimension and proximity that these projects and spaces are able to generate. Our approach has been, I would say, very intuitive, but it has also been strongly intentional, with efforts that would have focused the sharing of knowledge, collective programming, and which over time has also translated into the advocacy of cultural policies that are relevant both to the Azores, but also for other or for trans-regional contexts. So Walk and Talk and Vaga, so the biennial and the space, they don't exist in isolation. They exist in relation or in composition, as one of the artists that we have this year working with us in residency, Max Stewart, an American choreographer, would say, with all of these other gestures that we've nourished or that look to nourish a collaboration and cooperation. Just so I'll share some, like a cloud of projects. At the base, this artistic residency program, which looks to host and to facilitate and to support artists on the island. And when I say on the island, I mean those that are living there, those that are passing by, those that are wanting to come. The mediation program, Programa de Mediação, which is very focused on invitation and also in translation, and includes a series of then other actions and dynamics that go from like excursions to guided visits and workshops and even a school. Pars, which is a micro grant system, so it's also a way of sharing the resources that we have with other entities and artists and facilitators and practitioners in a context of autonomy. So it's not about us doing the projects, it's about us allowing them to do them or to sharing resources with them. Nova Vaga Prize, which is an art prize to support Azorean agents. Rara, a residency that brings together design and traditional crafts. Transmelhar, which is an educational program and project that frames art as a civic act. The Open Studios that celebrates the collective, and then this connects to some other projects, again, also of cultural advocacy, like MOVA, which is a civic movement for arts and culture that we co-founded in the Azores, and that looks to change cultural policies in the region. So I think over time, there's been a lot of reflections on the collective and on the commons that have been or have become absolutely central to our practice, and to Ondifala expanding its mission as both a cultural but also a political agent. So this placemaking has been guided by what we have come to call these practices of autonomy, as I was sharing before, which is something that is very, I would say, it's some sort of, it's between a philosophy and a methodology that emphasizes and acknowledges the power of individual initiatives within a collective and shared social, cultural, or even political vision. So in our case, or thinking of our institution, each project, whether it's the biennial or a grant or a public program, they operate with its own character, responding to specific contexts and within a very particular scale, while at the same time they're part of this larger network that collectively seeks to redefine the cultural landscape in the region, gesture by gesture. So, and this then goes beyond our initiatives. So also through skill development, resource sharing, and mentorship, we have been introducing this philosophy into a broader social and cultural ecosystem, which seeks to encourage others to lead and to organize their own projects and action. So instead of centralizing activity or monopolizing ideas, what we're trying to do is to prioritize a collaborative and a translocal model, one that recognizes the agency of each individual, but understands that it's always within it's always in the encounter with the others and with the location, with the place, that the true potential for transformation is somehow revealed. So we really see autonomy as a central an idea to true social transformation, and we're really trying to nurture it within the communities that we're part of, and we're like trying to support this culture that values process over outcomes and connection over control, and even diversity over monocultures, which is a big issue in the Azores because of its role within the Portuguese colonial project. And all of these projects and spaces of encounter, I think they're looking to enable a shift towards more synergetic, resilient, and self-sustainable, sustaining environments. So Walking, Talking, Vaga, so the biennial in this space, there are like these two main spaces where we're working. So they're aligned in terms of intentions, but again, operating at these different scales. And then what is common and transversal to them, to both of them, but also to the other projects, and truly at the heart of our work, is the artist residency program. Yeah.
Sorry, there was some. Somebody is not muting. I'm just checking the setting. No, you go ahead. I think all sold.
And I'm almost finishing. And then is the artist residency program, which is something that came very early in the development of the festival, because of course the first 2 years we were very young. We were 22 years at the time. 22 years old, and very naive also about what it meant to create an art project in a peripheral context like the Azores. But very quickly we understood the power of really creating a space for discovering what is not known yet, and to enable also the connection and the time for artists to encounter other practitioners in many different disciplines and fields. And of course, throughout the years, this program and the way we've been nurturing these residencies have changed a lot. And I think we've become much more intentional in the connections and in the spaces that we create. So the mission is very simple, but it's again, as I'm saying, like to provide artists with time, with space, with resources, which is a lot of times an issue for a lot of them. Resources, I don't mean only financial. I'm also talking about other sorts of resources that can help develop these new projects and these new researchers. And we try to really go into these transdisciplinary dialogues and also a translocal or transregional exchange that stems from our local context, and also from the entities, local entities and communities that we're collaborating with, but then that can somehow connect to broader context. So it also sustains this year-round program at these different projects that I was sharing with you, and of course shaping also the development of the biennial. So the residencies are very rooted in like this insular and ecological context, but they always stem from a larger biome, from the Azorean biome. And even when we're supporting projects that are addressing very global issues, the starting point is always the territory itself, its landscapes, its stories, its ways of inhabiting. So it's also ensuring that the work and the residency remains deeply connected with the place from which it's emerging. So the program takes different forms. We have the Vaga residencies, which are then projects that are or researchers that are then integrated with our temporadas, in English, seasons of our program. Our program in Vaga is organized around seasons, and it's normally and often in partnership with other institutions, local or international, from the University of the Azores to SPEA, to the government of the Azores and its different departments, a lot of them connected to ocean preservation as well. So it really depends on what the scope of the research is. Then we have the Walk and Talk biennial residencies, which are focused on research and development of new commissions that will be somehow presented during the biennial. And it also is something that happens in the context of what we call the journey towards the biennial. So these residencies are also a way of opening and making the subjects and themes that are addressed in the biennial more accessible and open to other people and entities. And then there's, as this is the case, a partnership residencies that focus on co-productions with other institutions, festivals, and entities, and then hosting and space sharing. So in this final example, we're supporting independent artists and collectives with resources and a space to work that are somehow moving through the Azores. So we're also helping and enabling them to connect with whoever makes sense. Also, as part of this process, we've been invited, especially in the context of the biennial, which will be happening very soon. We've invited all the commissioned artists to spend time in residency in the island ahead of the biennial. So these residencies, they allow them to research, to connect, and to begin developing these new projects in direct relation to the territory. And many of these new commissions, they're produced and conceived in collaboration with these entities. As I was telling you, the University is of the Azores, which, as you can imagine, as a peripheral institution, has a lot of constraints, both financially and logistically, in its in the way that it works. So our goal and the reason why we really want to connect and to work closely with the University of the Azores and its different research departments is to really to help these research centers grow and expand to other questions and to other fields through the connection with a lot of these artists and practitioners that we're inviting into the biennial, but also with entities like the Fisheries Department or SPEA, the Portuguese Society for the Study of Birds. So there's all of these entities that we invite or that we try to collaborate with. Here's some images of projects that we've been doing throughout the year. I don't want to focus any project in particular. I think it was put through, at least for us, it made more sense to share with you the way or what is guiding us in developing these programs. But I'll share also here again some images of what's happening this year. But I'll share this one, which I think is also a great example of how residencies can evolve around time. This project is called Rara. It's a residency that crosses local craftsmanship with contemporary design. And it started right in the beginning of Walk and Talk, I would say maybe 2014. But it has since grown into an autonomous project and program that brings together these artisans with national and international designers. And over the years, it has generated, I don't know, maybe around 200 prototypes. And in the recent years, it's like now taking a new step towards commercialization of some of these pieces, but now also more and more focusing on knowledge sharing and formation that will be done with CADA, which is the Center for Design and Craftsmanship of the Azores. It's a governmental entity. So yeah, it's interesting how this project that started as a very small residency, bringing people together, has now evolved into a program of its own and working tightly with governmental institutions in order to safeguard and to bring value to Azorean techniques and materials, and also creating a space where knowledge can be transmitted and shared. And then to finish, to wrap up, just of course take the opportunity to share that we're in the 25th of September, we'll open the first edition of Walk and Talk as a biennial. It had 11 editions, yearly editions from 2011 to 2022. And then we decided to stop so that we could also have a break or a pause to reassess what these projects are and how they can be developed and what can be our relationship towards the territory and to those who inhabit it and how we develop these things. So this first edition will happen in more or less a month, so we're very close. The title of this edition is Gestures of Abundance. So we're also thinking a lot of what it means to shift from models of scarcity into others of cooperative abundance. And it will bring together more than 80 artists and creators and practitioners from very different spaces in the world. It will last for 2 months. and it presents these new commissions that are developed in close dialogue with the islands, and it also helps us expand also what the island means, and what it can what can be said from it. So for those who are still on time, I hope you can somehow join us in the islands. The opening weekend will be from the 25th to the 28th of September, and we're going to be walking through the island a lot, and it's going to be interesting to understand what can be these gestures of abundance and how we can somehow imagine these other futures. And to conclude, I think to say that process, and also in regards to the biennial and to the artistic residency program, is that process, or the idea of process, that's already the first main work of the biennial itself. I think we really focus and treasure that, because I think it's very easy when we think of events like that, of like this, to focus on the outcomes. And of course, those matter, and of course they carry value, but it's just as important as everything that precedes and sustains them. So the process is not merely preparation, it's also, in our understanding, a living matter. It's a space of risk, it's also a space of affection, of attentiveness, and I think it's in the path itself, with its questions, with its ideas and decisions, and the time that that things need in order to take shape. So the biennial is also recognizes that the value of this journey in life, in overall, and where and everything that it brings together, people, practices, encounters. So I hope this allows us also to think and act from a place of abundance, and we're very excited to collaborate with TIDAL ArtS, and also to invite everyone to our islands, to the Atlantic, and think of and to work collectively in this journey. So thank you very much. I hope I was on time.